What's going on, guys? It's UrAvgConsumer, and today we're going to be spending a real day in the life with the Pixel Fold. The irony of today is that we are actually at this Galaxy Fold pop-up. I just got the new Fold devices, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Pixel Fold. So we're going to be spending a full day with this phone, learning all the ins and outs about it, seeing how it performs. But so far we're at 90% since I've been using it this morning. We'll see how that battery lasts throughout the rest of the day. All right, guys, so we are incredibly late. I was supposed to get here at 9. It's 11:08 right now. So I've actually got to run to another meeting. I'm actually gonna break up with Dom here for a bit, head to that meeting, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what I think about this phone. One thing I will say though, you guys know I typically hate walking around without a case, especially out in public where there's concrete everywhere. I feel oddly comfortable with this. Like, I don't feel like it's gonna slip out my hand, even though I'm scared of this thing kind of falling, always.
Now, before we got to the city, we had a pretty early start to the day, most of it being spent in an Uber, 3 hours to be exact. And I think that was because of a freak crane falling accident in the city. Absolutely wild stuff. But that meant I spent a lot of time on the phone doing all kinds of stuff, from answering emails to, of course, watching some content. And I feel like this is the kind of scenario where having a big screen is really beneficial. I was able to watch it on the 7.6-inch display, which just ups the experience. Now, because this is Google's first folding phone, they made some upgrades to certain applications like Gmail, where it kind of does a split view where you can see your mail on one side, content on the other. So it's nice to see upgraded Google applications taking advantage of the larger display now. So while it might have been a much longer Uber ride than I expected, having that larger display definitely helped to alleviate some time in a more exciting way. I will say though, I did struggle with the speakers when trying to hear my content in the Uber, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, I think it's pretty well documented across the internet that a lot of people are enjoying the form factor of this phone. The wider but shorter body definitely feels really good in the hand. It's a lot more screen than those narrow phones that we've been getting in the past. So I think a lot more people are just comfortable using this thing similarly to the way they've been using their normal smartphones. Now, another thing I really got to give Google credit for is the build quality of this phone. So we've got stainless steel around the edges. It feels really good in the hand. It feels like a premium device. Now, the only knock on this is that if you're not careful, you don't have like a case on it, you will start to see scratches over time. Sadly, mine started getting some scratches, so I'm a little hurt by it, but it does feel really good in the hand and it does help it to feel very premium. But amongst that stainless steel frame, we do have a power button with a fingerprint scanner. I feel like the fingerprint scanner works really quickly. You can just tap it and unlock the phone, or you just rest your finger on it and it'll unlock it as well. Both very responsive. For me personally, I don't really care for fingerprint scanners in the display. I know a lot of people like that, but I prefer it on the power button. I feel like that makes more sense, and I'm glad Google went with it here. Now, when you open up the phone, you get access to that 7.6-inch display. Although I will say the crease, I've had a harder time getting over it in this phone for whatever reason. And I think that might be because when you open up the phone, it doesn't do the full 180 on your first open. So I always feel like I have to push it down a little bit more. And a lot of people have already mentioned this, and I don't know if it's something that would have bothered me if I didn't hear about it already. But it is pretty annoying to have to feel like the phone isn't completely open when you're trying to use it in that bigger tablet mode. For me personally, I found myself trying to open it up a little bit more than I have any other foldable smartphone, so that is something to think about. I do feel like it might play a role in making the crease a little bit more prominent, but when you're in a dark area, you can't really tell, but anywhere with some light, it's definitely visible in my opinion. Overall, it's a very comfortable phone to use, whether it's closed, and when open, like I said, I do find myself trying to pry it open a little bit more, but for the most part, I still prefer this design over anything I've used in the foldable market so far.
Okay guys, so we are back in the studio finally. It was a long first part of the day. Actually, so long that it's afternoon now. It's 3 p.m., which is absolutely wild. And we still got a lot of stuff to do in here. We've got to unbox this thing that just came in. It said it has dry ice, freeze upon arrival. So we got to pop this thing open. We got to get right to it. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab a story really quick. All right, y'all, so a black box just showed up to the studio. So you know what we got to do. We got to open it up, see what's inside. Listen, I'm not, I know we already talked about like the form factor, but for such a short device, I'm not mad at it. Like, I love the way this feels. Like, I'm sorry, I feel like all foldables should have this form factor. And Microsoft was the first to kind of get it right with the Microsoft Duo. But on this guy, it feels great. Screen on the outside, wider. It just feels like a more normal phone to use than like some of the really slim foldables out there that we just picked up today. It's okay, it's okay. We love them all. While we're unboxing this, so we're gonna add this to the Massive Tech unboxing because we're not quite ready to shoot that video just yet. So we're gonna unbox this thing and then add it later. I'm gonna record some footage here of the unboxing. You can pretty much just use this as a tripod because it's a foldable phone. Now, all foldables kind of have this feature since they're all foldable, but I gotta say, it is nice to be able to do it. I'll record. Let's do it. All right, guys, so we just unboxed all this twisted metal stuff. It's actually really cool. We got a fridge, travel pouch, some ice cream, a bomber jacket, and some other stuff too, some survival gear. So I am all about this. That's a win for today. Let's actually take a picture of the refrigerator. Let's go wide here and bam. This is not bad at all. Just from a quality perspective, the framing and all that, this is a terrible picture. Okay, anyway, let's get another picture so I can post this. Take a little bit more time to frame up. All right, not bad. This will definitely do the trick for social media. I do want to talk a little bit more about the cameras.
Now, when it comes to the camera quality, I gotta say, this does have a lot of the characteristics of a standard Pixel phone. You get those nice contrasty shots if you're into that. The quality overall is nice, but it doesn't match up with like the Pixel 7 Pro. And I feel like that might be a little bit disappointing to some who are shelling out the $1,800 that this thing costs. Me personally, I've always been a little bit disappointed that all of the foldable phones don't have cameras that match up with the flagship devices. So it's kind of like what we see with the Samsung phones, but it is still rather disappointing to me because this is supposed to be a phone that kind of has it all. It has the outside screen, the bigger screen on the inside, has the premium price, and you kind of want cameras that match that. It's not what we're seeing here, but overall, I think the average person using this phone isn't really going to complain too much about the overall quality. You can still pull off some really nice shots. Portrait mode looks great. They do have that darker look to it because of the up contrast, but I think for the most part, you do get shots that look like Pixel shots, but it's just not of the highest quality. And considering the price, some people might not be happy with that.
I don't know, man. Volume's still pretty low. So like around the 70. All right, let's check out one of our videos. So we just dropped a video actually.
What's going on, guys? It's UrAvgConsumer, and it's time for a good old-fashioned showdown.
I mean, look at this volume bar. It's not very loud, even all the way over here.
So this year, Sony dropped a new design for
And then when you get to
flagship
here,
earbuds.
sure. But man, these are not impressive speakers by any means. When you spend like close to $2,000 on a phone, you want the speakers to sound good. But these speakers leave a lot to be desired. Very disappointing, to be honest.
What's your battery at?
Oh, good question. So it is 5:11, getting pretty close to the end of the day. So we've got 51% left. Should be able to get me through the rest of the day, no problem. Probably because I've been just in meetings all day. I wasn't really on the phone that much. I wasn't really taxing it. So on a day like today, battery's not so bad.
Now, when it comes to battery life overall, I feel like this was a pretty average experience. On days where I didn't use it much, I lasted till like 8 o'clock, as you saw in the real day in the life. But on days where it got a lot more use, I was charging it a little bit earlier, maybe around like the 5 o'clock range. So it all depends on how you use it, especially if you use the larger display a lot more. I'm not somebody who jumps into the larger display often unless, like you saw in the real day in the life, I'm like sitting down for a long period of time, maybe eating some food, maybe on an Uber, watching content, or maybe even playing a game. So a lot of my battery use doesn't come from the larger display, but I do feel like if you're someone who does, you might see less than stellar battery life. For me, this one feels pretty average. Now, surprisingly, from a performance perspective, this phone has been pretty solid, better than any of the Pixels I've used so far with the Tensor chips inside of them. You guys know me, I'm a big gamer, and usually that's my benchmark for how well a phone performs. I typically see some stutters in my gameplay when I'm playing on any of the previous Pixels with Tensor chips, but on this guy, it's been a really smooth experience, knock on wood. Now, of course, we know Google's strongest point is going to be with the software experience. So you got a lot of cool features from Google that you don't see on other phones, like the call screening feature, which I still personally think is an absolutely amazing feature. But we're not seeing a ton of software perks when it comes to the foldable experience. You do have the ability to, of course, use split screen where you can have two apps side by side. We do have some really cool dock features as well. But I would have liked to see a better experience when it comes to using applications with the bigger screen. Right now, you can just have them right in the center and you have like those two big black borders on the side, and you can move the apps closer to the sides if you want to do that. But you still got all that empty wasted space. But I am happy though that a lot of the Google applications do take advantage of the larger display, but we just got to see that come to third-party apps. And I don't know when that issue is going to be fixed on Android overall. And that's no fault of Google per se. It's an Android issue, honestly. Android tablets don't have a lot of optimized apps. I feel like it's weird to use Instagram on the larger screen. I'll probably always opt for the front screen because of this. Now, overall, when it comes to recommending this phone, I will say the main drawbacks that I see are the camera not being up to snuff with like flagship devices, as well as the app situation on the larger display. But aside from that, I feel like this is a really solid phone. At $1,800, would I recommend it? Overall, I don't think it provides the full experience that the average person might want at this price. But if you are a Pixel enthusiast, Google brings a lot to the table with this one. I just want to see better app support for that bigger screen. And maybe hopefully next year we see better cameras, although I'm not counting on that. But that about wraps it up for this video, guys. Hopefully that helps. Till the next one, guys, it's your average consumer. Peace.